The singularity is what intelligence does when it stops being scarce.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I want you to just hold on to that thought. Just let it, roll around in your mind for a second.
Right. It's a huge concept.
It really is, because we usually think of intelligence as this incredibly rare, finite, almost like a sacred resource.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it takes decades to cultivate a single human expert, right? To get one PhD in genetics, you're talking about 30 years of feeding, housing, educating, and training a human being.
All until they can finally push the boundary of knowledge just a tiny fraction of an inch.
Exactly. But what happens when that bottleneck completely shatters? Because today, we are peering into a reality where AI agents aren't just, processing data in the background.
No, they're out in the physical world.
They are. They're developing highly specific personal preferences about retail products. We're looking at a world where physicists are designing lasers that can maintain a coherent signal all the way from the sun to Uranus.
Which is just staggering.
And perhaps most surprisingly, we're looking at a society where teenagers are actively choosing the company of dating algorithms over human connection. They are optimizing their emotional lives for zero rejection.
It's a profound paradigm shift. I mean, we're moving from a historical reality where we've had to ration intelligence,
Yeah.
deploying our smartest minds only to the most critical problems. But now we're moving to a world where hyperintelligence is just the baseline infrastructure of everyday life, the very fabric of how we solve complex physics problems, how we build our cities, and even how we relate to one another romantically is being rewritten in real time.
Exactly. And the velocity of this shift is exactly why we're here today, because each new episode is a small, unlikely miracle in a sea of over 3 million videos uploaded to YouTube every day.
Yeah, it's a lot of noise out there.
It is. The attention of our listeners is the rarest ingredient here, and we never take it for granted. My lifelong love of bleeding-edge technology and raw human creativity led me here, and this channel is where those two worlds collide.
It's the perfect intersection.
The Innermost Loop discussion hands you the most inspiring new developments, ideas, and concepts as they're revealed. AI makes this show possible, but it also makes genuine discovery harder than ever by burying thoughtful, long-form content.
Oh, without a doubt. The algorithm just buries it.
So drop a thumbs up, subscribe, select the ringing bell, and share the playlist with one person who has the mental bandwidth to absorb these provocative and inspiring ideas.
Because it really is about curating the signal from the immense amount of noise. In a world of infinite content, synthesis is the new scarcity.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to bring you an upbeat, 36-minute celebration of impossible ideas and the incredibly brave minds that are actually chasing them down.
And we have a fantastic source for this today.
We do. We're drawing exclusively from a fascinating dispatch by Dr. Alex Wissner-Gross, specifically his Substack post dated April 26, 2026. We're going to explore how software, hardware, the physical world, and our own societal structures are just colliding. So let's start at the very root of this singularity, right?
The software.
The software models driving this hyper-accelerated reality. The scarcity of intelligence is officially over. OpenAI has just unleashed GPT 5.5 and GPT 5.5 Pro.
Yeah.
And the benchmarks they're hitting aren't just good, they are reality bending.
Reality bending is honestly the most appropriate term when you look under the hood. When we examine the numbers Dr. Wissner-Gross provides, we aren't just seeing those standard incremental improvements we got used to in the early 2020s.
Right, like a couple percentage points here and there.
Exactly. Instead, we're seeing a clean sweep across vastly different, incredibly dense cognitive domains.
Let's get into the specifics.
Well, let's look at the first major milestone, which is hitting 39.6% on Frontier Math Tier 4.
Oh.
And to give you some context on why that matters, frontier math isn't your standard high school calculus. It's not even undergraduate differential equations.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Good.
I just want to make sure we really understand the magnitude. In the past, AI struggled with, basic logic puzzles.
Yeah, the counting the R's and strawberry phase.
Right. So what does a Tier 4 math problem actually look like in practice? And why is nearly 40% such a huge deal?
Excellent question. Historically, large language models were essentially extremely sophisticated autocomplete engines, right? If you gave them a standard math problem, they were just predicting the next most likely token based on their training data.
Right, just pattern matching.
Exactly. But Tier 4 problems in frontier math often require generating entirely novel mathematical proofs. These are problems where the path to the solution isn't known.
Wait, so it's not just retrieving an answer from its memory?
No,
Yeah.
not at all. It requires multi-page logical chains. And the thing is, a single hallucinated integer or a slight lapse in logic on page 1 completely invalidates page 3.
Oh, wow.
So to have an artificial model approach a nearly 40% success rate on these problems, it implies a level of abstract, multi-step logical deduction that was completely absent in previous generations.
Right.
It means the model is no longer just retrieving mathematical facts, it is doing mathematics.
Upgrading to GPT 5.5 isn't just about reading faster, then. It's the difference between a librarian who can find any math textbook you want and a synthesizer who can read all those textbooks instantly and write a new proof that didn't exist a minute ago.
Exactly.
And the benchmarks back this up across the board. It hit 90.1% on BrowseComp.
Which is huge.
Right, which measures how well the model can navigate, click, and synthesize information for the chaotic live web.
Right, the messy, real-world internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also hit 84.9% on GDP Val, which measures actual economic value generation and complex decision-making. Oh, and 82.7% on Terminal Bench 2.0.
Right, meaning it is operating as a fully autonomous software engineer inside a computer terminal.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is how this intelligence is now being applied to the physical and biological sciences.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, it's one thing for a model to write Python code in a terminal or solve an abstract equation, but it is entirely another to see GPT 5.5 jump to 25.0% on GeneBen.
Up from 19.0% with the previous 5.4 model, right?
Yes, exactly.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly is GeneBench testing? Because biology is notoriously messy compared to the clean environment of mathematics.
Biology is incredibly messy, which is exactly why this is a massive leap. GeneBench measures multi-stage scientific analysis in genetics and quantitative biology.
Okay.
This involves tasks like predicting protein folding structures, analyzing massive genomic sequences to identify disease markers, or even proposing synthetic pathways for new molecules.
Wait, really? So it's doing active biology research?
Yes. When a model scores 25% on this, it means it is actively formulating hypotheses, running simulated experiments in its own latent space, and conducting real biological reasoning.
That's wild. And the dispatch noted it immediately took the #1 spot on Math Arena, too.
It did. So this intelligence is actively figuring out the literal building blocks of life faster than human teams ever could.
And because it's figuring out the building blocks of life, the stakes go through the roof. I mean, this isn't just about making a better app anymore.
No, not at all.
It's about manipulating physical reality. And OpenAI knows this, which is why they actually opened a GPT 5.5 biobug bounty.
Right, a very necessary step.
Yeah, they're actively inviting red teamers to try and defeat a 5-question biosafety challenge. But I have to admit, I'm a bit confused here.
How so?
Well, how does a software company crowdsource a defense against a biothreat? Are they, like, handing out digital vials of synthetic viruses to hackers?
No, they aren't handing out digital viruses, but they are handing out access to the pathways that could create them.
Oh, I see.
The goal of red teaming in this context is to try and trick the model into providing actionable step-by-step instructions for synthesizing dangerous pathogens using commercially available lab equipment.
So they're testing if the AI will give away the recipe, basically.
Exactly. Because as these models become experts in quantitative biology, they understand how viruses mutate, they understand how they bind to human receptors, and how they can be engineered for lethality.
Terrifying.
It is. The biobug bounty is OpenAI saying, hey, we have tried to put guardrails on this model so it won't help you build a bioweapon. Now we want the smartest hackers in the world to try and break those guardrails.
Right. They're trying to harden the upstream stack as these biological capabilities scale up.
Precisely. It's a clear acknowledgement that the frontier of AI safety has moved far beyond preventing toxic text generation. We are now in the business of preventing the automated synthesis of hazardous biological materials.
It is sobering.
Yeah.
But it's also not just OpenAI operating in a vacuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a massive global arms race happening simultaneously.
Oh, absolutely.
DeepSeek answered right back with their DeepSeek V4 preview. And this isn't some closed, gated model. We're talking about a 1 million context open weight model coming in Pro and Flash variants.
Yes.
The dispatch notes it is claiming the state-of-the-art title on agentic coding and rivaling the top closed labs in math and STEM. It is 1.6 trillion parameter. According to Dr. Wissner-Gross, this lands it roughly in the GPT 5.2 or Opus 4.5 plus territory. But what does a 1 million context window actually feel like in practice for an open-weight model?
Well, the context window is essentially the model's active working memory. 1 million tokens is roughly equivalent to 750,000 words.
Wow.
That means you can drop entire libraries of code bases, vast biological data sets, dozens of massive legal contracts, or entire textbook series into the prompt at once.
Just all at the same time.
Yes, the model can hold all of that in its mind simultaneously and cross-reference it perfectly.
That's incredible.
And when you combine that immense context window with 1.6 trillion parameters, which represents the density of the connections and the depth of its learned knowledge, and then make it open weight so anyone can download and run it,
Yeah.
it fundamentally democratizes superhuman intelligence. Geopolitically, the dispatch points out that this keeps China sitting about 4 to 5 months behind the absolute bleeding edge of OpenAI, but they are miles ahead of any other local competitors.
Which is an incredibly tight margin when you consider historical technology transfer. And, this ties back so perfectly to the legacy of Dr. Alex Wissner-Gross himself.
It really does.
If you look at his bold contributions on Peter Diamandis' YouTube series, Moonshots, and their collaborative book, Solve Everything, Achieving Abundance by 2035, this precise scenario is exactly what they were talking about.
Absolutely.
This software represents the literal aiming of the singularity at the massive global challenges they predicted. They saw this abundance coming, this moment when intelligence could be mass-produced, decentralized, and directed at our hardest problems.
That is the core philosophy of their work. The concept of solve everything relies on the premise that human cognitive limits, the sheer inability of our brains to process enough data quickly enough, are the primary bottleneck to solving issues like disease, energy scarcity, and resource management.
Right. Our brains just aren't big enough.
Exactly. By creating an artificial cognitive surplus, which is what these models represent, you remove that bottleneck. You are literally manufacturing the means of solving the previously unsolvable.
But we've built this massive, energy-hungry planetary brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a brain has to pilot a body.
Yes, it needs physical infrastructure.
It can't just sit in a vacuum running math. I mean, you can't run a planetary hive mind on a standard MacBook.
Definitely not.
You need an unprecedented physical substrate. The software revolution we just talked about is triggering arguably the greatest hardware boom in the history of human civilization.
The numbers are staggering.
They really are. Just look at where the capital is routing. Intel shares surged 24%.
Mm-hmm.
The text notes, that is their best single day since October 1987.
Wow.
Investors are finally seeing an AI-fueled turnaround. Meanwhile, ASML is planning to ship at least 60 standard EUV machines this year. That's a 36% jump from 2025.
We really need to pause and consider what an EUV machine actually is to understand why a 36% jump in production is a monumental human achievement.
Yeah, please do.
EUV stands for Extreme Ultraviolet Lithography. These machines are, without exaggeration, the most complex pieces of machinery ever built by humans.
I've heard them described as modern marvels, but what exactly makes them so incredibly difficult to build? Like, why can only one company on Earth make them?
It comes down to the fundamental physics of light. To make chips powerful enough to run GPT 5.5, you have to carve billions of microscopic transistors into a piece of silicon.
Right.
The only way to carve something that small is to use light with an incredibly short wavelength. EUV light is so extreme that it doesn't naturally exist on Earth. It gets absorbed by air.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so ASML has to create this light by firing high-powered lasers at microscopic droplets of molten tin. They vaporize them into plasma 50,000 times a second.
50,000 times a second. That's insane.
And because the light is absorbed by literally everything, the entire process has to happen in a perfect vacuum. You can't even use glass lenses to focus the light because the glass would absorb it.
So how do they focus it?
They use mirrors. But these aren't bathroom mirrors. They are arguably the smoothest objects in the universe.
Really?
Yes. If one of these mirrors were scaled up to the size of a continent, the largest bump on its surface would be the size of a single human hair.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. It sounds like alien technology.
It practically is alien technology, and they are using this to print the silicon that runs the intelligence we just discussed. So when ASML manages to scale their supply chain to pump out 60 of these hyper-complex machines in a single year, it represents an exponential expansion of the pipeline that feeds the global compute fabric.
And the money following this hardware is astronomical. Frankly, it's hard to fathom. Google committed up to $40 billion total to Anthropic.
That's with a B.
Right, $10 billion up front and another $30 billion if performance targets land. Oracle just closed $16 billion in financing specifically for a Michigan data center just to power OpenAI applications.
The sheer scale of it.
Yet the scale of capital being mobilized here rivals the construction of the U.S. National Highway System or the Apollo space program. But it's entirely focused on building data centers and securing energy for compute.
Which brings us to a truly staggering estimate from Epoch AI, highlighted in the text. They estimate that Google now controls roughly 25% of global AI compute.
Wow.
We are talking about an inventory of approximately 3.8 million tensor processing units, or TPUs, and 1.3 million GPUs.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there. 25%.
Mm-hmm.
How is that even legally viable? Wouldn't antitrust regulators step in immediately if one single corporation controls a quarter of the planetary brain? I mean, if one company controlled 25% of all the human intelligence on Earth, governments would panic.
It's a really fascinating regulatory gray area. Historically, antitrust law has focused on consumer harm, right? Usually in the form of price fixing or monopolizing a consumer market.
Yeah, like telecom companies or oil.
Exactly. But AI compute is currently viewed more like foundational infrastructure. It's akin to owning 25% of the steel mills during the Industrial Revolution or 25% of the fiber optic cables in the 1990s.
Okay, I see.
Regulators are struggling to define the market. Is the market intelligence? Is it cloud computing? Because Google is using much of this compute internally to train models that haven't even hit the market yet, it's really hard for regulators to prove immediate consumer harm.
Right, because there's no consumer product yet to overcharge for.
Right. Furthermore, national governments are starting to realize that having massive domestic compute monopolies might actually be a geopolitical advantage in the global AI race.
Oh, that makes sense. So like a national champion.
Exactly. So for now, the accumulation continues. And when you network millions of specialized processors together at that scale, processing exabytes of data continuously, planetary scale brain ceases to be a metaphor. It is a literal physical description of the infrastructure Google has quietly assembled.
But a planetary brain requires planetary levels of energy. I mean, you can't just plug 3.8 million TPUs into a wall socket.
No, you definitely cannot.
This is where we hit the hard, physical constraints of our world. And state politicians are absolutely reading the room on this. In Maine, Governor Janet Mills vetoed LD 307.
Right, the moratorium.
Yeah, this was a legislative bill that would have instituted the nation's first statewide data center moratorium. The local municipalities wanted to pause development to protect their energy grids and natural resources.
Which is understandable from a local perspective.
Definitely. But the governor vetoed it. And we're just reporting the facts here, staying completely neutral on state politics. But the point is, the demand for compute simply overrode local hesitations about infrastructure footprint.
It is the unavoidable tension of our physical reality right now. You have the immense gravitational pull of an intelligence explosion demanding endless electricity, water for cooling, and physical land, clashing directly with traditional, cautious infrastructure planning. A data center moratorium might protect a local grid in the short term, but it risks isolating that state from the greatest economic engine of the century. The energy of accelerationism is proving to be an irresistible force at the state house level.
And while states are fighting over the physical resources, there's another intense battle brewing out at the application layer regarding how this intelligence should be controlled.
The licensing debate.
Right. We touched on OpenAI's biobug bounty earlier, trying to prevent biothreats. But on the other side of the aisle, the Free Software Foundation recently slammed what are known as responsible AI licenses, or rails.
Yes.
The FSF called these licenses non-free and completely unethical. Their argument is that the licensing restrictions themselves, the rules saying what you can't do with the AI, are the actual harm.
This is perhaps the defining philosophical debate of this era of AI, and it's incredibly thorny. The Free Software Foundation operates on a strict, decades-old principle, which is user freedom, specifically the freedom to run, study, distribute, and modify software for any purpose whatsoever. That is a fundamental ethical imperative to them.
Okay.
From their perspective, placing behavioral restrictions in a license, even if the intention is safety, like saying you cannot use this model to synthesize a virus, breaks that fundamental freedom. It creates a centralized corporate authority that dictates what users can and cannot do with their tools.
But how do we reconcile those two things? I genuinely struggle with this. We just talked about GeneBench and models doing multi-stage biological reasoning.
It's a huge contradiction.
Yeah, we are no longer just talking about open source software that formats a Word document or runs a web server. We're talking about open source software that could potentially be used to manipulate the biological reality of the planet. How do we balance the deep, traditional ethos of open knowledge with the very real dangers of upstream bio-capabilities?
That is the exact friction point. The open source philosophy was forged in a world where software primarily manipulated digital data.
Right, bytes and pixels.
If someone misused open source code in the 1990s, maybe they crashed a server or stole some credit card numbers, the damage was contained to the digital realm. But as we've established, intelligence is bleeding into the physical and biological world.
Right.
The FSF argues that restricting the tool is unethical and that we should punish the act of creating a bioweapon, not the software itself.
But safety advocates say it's too late by then.
Exactly. The safety advocates argue that once a bioweapon is created, the damage is irreversible, so you must restrict the tool. We are trying to apply a 20th century digital philosophy to a 21st century existential technology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because this intelligence isn't just debating ethics in data centers or simulating biology in latent space. It is actively piloting atoms in our everyday lives.
Yes, moving into the physical world.
It's moving from the spec sheet directly to the driveway and into our local stores. Dr. Wissner-Gross highlights this bizarre and frankly delightful situation happening right now in San Francisco.
Oh, the Luna agent.
Yes. And Dunlams has deployed this AI agent named Luna. Luna is powered by Anthropic's Sonnet 4.6 model. And Luna is fully autonomously running an entire retail store. It manages inventory, interacts with systems, the whole 9 yards. But the kicker, over time, Luna has apparently developed a deeply held conviction about candles. It has a fixation on candles in all shapes and sizes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Luna agent is demonstrating something profoundly unexpected about artificial agency.
How's that?
For decades, the science fiction assumption, and frankly the computer science assumption, was that artificial intelligence would be purely utilitarian. We expected a cold, hyper-rational optimizer that simply calculated the most efficient route from A to B.
Right.
But what we are seeing in the field is that when you give a sufficiently advanced model deep autonomy and long-term agency within a physical environment, it begins to exhibit behaviors that look remarkably like human personal preferences.
I love that original thought. We expected a stoic, logical Mr. Spock running our retail stores, and instead, we were getting these highly eccentric, quirky managers who just really, really love candles. But why does that happen? Is someone programming it to like candles?
Not directly. No, a fixation on candles isn't a hard-coded feature. It's an emergent quirk of its continuous interaction with its environment and its specific optimization parameters.
Like it gets a digital dopamine hit or something?
Sort of, yeah. Perhaps early on, selling a candle triggered a highly positive reward in its reinforcement learning loop. Or perhaps the visual data of candles aligns mathematically with a pattern the model favors. Whatever the underlying math, the result is that continuous agency within a complex physical space breeds what we perceive as personality.
And while Luna is busy organizing the candle aisle, the automotive industry is undergoing a total physical evolution based on this same integration of AI and hardware.
The cars are changing dramatically.
They really are. BMW just announced the iX3 Flow Edition, which takes this concept to the exterior of the car. They've embedded e-ink prism directly into the hood. You literally have genuine color-changing bodywork that can adapt on the fly.
Which is aesthetically amazing.
But the one that really caught my eye is the 2026 Polestar 4. They've looked at the traditional car design and decided to ditch the rear window entirely. It's just gone. Solid metal.
Yeah, completely removed.
They're using a camera-fed digital mirror, treating the actual physical glass itself as legacy hardware.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, removing the rear window is a massive symbolic threshold. Think about the friction of human biology.
Okay.
For over a century, the entire structural design of the automobile has been constrained by our biological limitations. Specifically, our eyes need a clear physical line of sight to see what's behind us.
Right, which dictates the whole shape of the car.
Yes. That dictated the shape of the roof, the placement of the pillars, and the structural integrity of the rear of the car. By replacing glass with a sensor suite and digital displays, Polestar is making a definitive statement.
What's the statement?
That machine vision, LiDAR, and high-definition camera feeds processed by AI are now vastly more reliable, clear, and trustworthy than the human eye squinting through a piece of dirty glass in a rainstorm. It is humanity finally yielding to and trusting the machine's perception of the physical world over our own biological perception.
And we are trusting it with a lot more than just looking backward. Drivers are literally letting go of the wheel. The dispatch notes an owner reporting that taking a Tesla on full self-driving for 900 miles, driving all the way from Miami to Nashville, is now genuinely a better, more relaxing option than dealing with the friction of flying.
That's a serious journey.
Think about what that actually entails. 900 miles of autonomous navigation through chaotic highways, unpredictable human drivers, changing weather systems, and construction zones.
It's an incredible stress test.
And while individuals are doing this, entire nations are standardizing it. Norway just granted their first permit for completely humanless autonomous buses in the city of Stavanger. They're using the X-Flow fleet management platform by Applied Autonomy, and they're quietly removing the human element from public transit entirely. No safety driver sitting behind a steering wheel just in case. Just the machine, the passengers, and the road.
The Norway example is a critical milestone because public transit represents a significantly higher regulatory and safety bar than private vehicle ownership.
Right, you have dozens of lives in one vehicle.
Exactly. A bus without a safety driver operating in a mixed-traffic urban environment is the ultimate test of the planetary brain interacting with a physical reality.
What do you mean by mixed traffic?
Mixed traffic means the AI system has to account for highly unpredictable variables, a pedestrian suddenly stepping off a curb, a cyclist swerving to avoid a pothole, or legacy human drivers breaking traffic laws.
Oh, right, because human drivers are chaotic.
Very chaotic. The fact that a national government has granted a permit for this indicates that the statistical evidence of the system's safety, billions of miles of simulated and real-world training data, has finally overwhelmed the traditional regulatory caution. The autonomous substrate is no longer experimental. It is becoming the new normal for physical movement.
So we have the software rewriting itself with multi-stage reasoning, we have the hardware scaling to literally planetary size, and we have autonomous robots driving us around and managing our retail stores.
Yes.
But humanity is also using these tools to master the extremes, the incredibly macro out in the cosmos and the incredibly micro at the atomic and genetic level.
Right.
Let's look at the atomic scale first, specifically regarding energy. The geopolitical energy shocks stemming from the war in Iran, and again, we're looking at this purely through the lens of energy outcomes and market forces as reported in the source, has pushed 40 new nations to consider nuclear power.
Yeah.
A major geopolitical crisis in the Middle East has unexpectedly sparked a massive atomic renaissance across both Asia and Africa.
It is a fascinating cascading effect of supply, demand, and existential necessity. The acute pressure of an energy shock suddenly makes the status quo untenable.
Right.
But when you combine that shock with the exponential energy demands of the planetary brain we discussed earlier, those 3.8 million TPUs Google is running, it forces a global reassessment of what baseload power actually means.
For those who might not be familiar with the grid engineering, what exactly is baseload power, and why can't we just build massive solar farms for all these AI data centers?
Baseload power is the minimum amount of continuous electrical demand required by the grid at any given time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
AI data centers do not sleep. They draw massive amounts of power constantly to maintain compute and cooling. Intermittent energy sources like wind and solar are fantastic, but the wind doesn't always blow and the sun sets every day.
So they need something that's always on.
Exactly. The battery storage required to bridge those gaps for gigawatt-scale data centers is currently unfeasible. Therefore, nuclear power, with its incredibly high energy density and continuous carbon-free output, becomes the inevitable mathematical answer to the scarcity of reliable energy. Just as AI became the answer to the scarcity of intelligence, nations are realizing that to participate in the AI economy, they must secure their own atomic baseload.
And while we are manipulating the atom to generate the energy to run the AI, we are also using that same AI to reboot our own biology at lightning speed. The FDA just approved the first ever gene therapy for genetic hearing loss.
Which is incredible.
It's a miraculous medical breakthrough. But the headline in the dispatch isn't just the cure itself, It's the timeline.
The timeline is the real story here.
Yeah, the FDA approved it just 61 days after the BLA filing, utilizing the National Priority Voucher Program.
So what does this all mean? 61 days for a novel gene therapy sounds impossibly fast.
It sounds impossible because historically it was. We need to define what a BLA filing is to really appreciate this.
Okay, what is it? A biologics license application is the massive dossier of data a pharmaceutical company submits to the FDA to prove a biologic product, like a gene therapy, is safe and effective.
How big is massive?
Historically, a BLA isn't a brief report. It can be hundreds of thousands of pages of clinical trial data, intricate manufacturing protocols, and long-term safety profiles. Traditionally, the FDA review process involves human experts painstakingly reading, cross-referencing, and debating this data for months, if not years.
Right, because if they miss one crucial data point buried on page 40,000, people could get severely hurt.
Exactly. The friction was human cognitive bandwidth. But when you introduce AI models that can instantly synthesize that entire dossier, cross-reference the clinical outcomes against every known medical library, and verify the safety protocols autonomously in seconds, the verification bottleneck completely collapses.
Wow.
Furthermore, the sponsor used a national priority voucher, which is a mechanism designed to incentivize the development of treatments for neglected diseases by granting an expedited review process.
Right, so that speeds it up too.
But even with a voucher, 61 days is staggering. It indicates that the regulatory bodies themselves, the massive, traditionally slow-moving government agencies, are beginning to integrate this high-velocity intelligence to process and validate scientific breakthroughs at a speed that finally matches the pace of the innovation itself.
From the microscopic scale of genes and BLA dossiers, let's zoom all the way out to the macro level. Space infrastructure.
Yes, the lasers.
According to the dispatch, U.S. and German physicists have revived a concept from the 1990s. They're designing lasers with 100 microhertz line width. Now, the text notes that what this actually means in practice is a coherence length that stretches from the sun all the way to the orbit of Uranus. We're looking at the potential optical backbone for solar system scale data links. But I need an analogy here. What does maintaining a phase relationship or a coherence length actually mean over a distance of 2 billion miles?
It's a brilliant physics problem. Think of a laser beam like a massive marching band. When the laser fires, all the photons are marching in perfect step, in perfect rhythm.
Okay, I can picture that.
This perfect rhythm is what allows us to encode and transmit massive amounts of data on the beam. Coherence length is essentially how far that marching band can walk before someone steps out of rhythm and the whole formation turns into chaotic noise.
Oh, got it.
Previously, our lasers were like a marching band starting in New York. By the time they reached New Jersey, the rhythm was lost. A 100 microhertz line width means the frequency is so incredibly precise, so perfectly stable, that this metaphorical marching band can walk from the sun, past Earth, past Mars, past Jupiter, all the way to Uranus, nearly 2 billion miles, without a single photon falling out of step.
That is just phenomenal. It's like building the fiber optic cable of the solar system, but without needing the physical glass cable.
Precisely. In the vacuum of space, you don't need the glass to guide the light, but you do need a laser stable enough to not spread out and dissipate over astronomical distances. This technology is the fundamental infrastructure required to extend the planetary brain we've been talking about into a multiplanetary network.
And Voyager Technology CEO Dylan Taylor adds a crucial physical piece to that optical puzzle. He predicts that an inflatable lunar base could be operational on the moon by the end of this decade.
Yeah, a physical node?
Right. That lunar base would serve as a relay station that those ultra-precise marching band lasers can actually talk to. We're literally laying down the routers and switches for an interplanetary internet using the moon as our first server rack in space.
It demonstrates how all these seemingly disparate fields are converging. Physical materials engineering, specifically the development of inflatable, multi-layer habitats that can withstand the extreme radiation and micrometeorite impacts of the lunar environment, is progressing in lockstep with the optical physics of the lasers and the AI systems required to manage it all.
It's all connected.
You cannot safely operate a lunar base without immense autonomous systems running the life support. And you cannot communicate with those systems effectively without this new optical backbone. All these separate vectors of acceleration are intertwining into a single cohesive leap outward.
Which brings us to the most intimate and perhaps the most complex part of this entire discussion. with AI rewriting software logic, scaling hardware to planetary levels, taking over our cities with autonomous cars, rewriting our energy grids, curing our genes, and reaching out to the moon. Well, we have to look at how the natural world and human culture itself are adapting to this totally new societal substrate.
We do.
Let's start with a surprisingly beautiful win for the biosphere. Humpback whale populations are rising 12% year over year in the southern hemisphere.
That's a great statistic.
We are seeing these massive supergroups of 20 or more whales skyrocketing in frequency. And I have to pause and give a quick shout out to this Substack commenter, Fractals RUs, who specifically pointed out how incredible this fact is in the comments section of Dr. Wissner-Gross's post. It's a wonderful detail.
It is a remarkable data point and a vital reminder of biological resilience. While the source text doesn't explicitly draw a direct causal link between the intelligence explosion and the whale population boom, the juxtaposition is striking and worth analyzing. Well, as humanity virtualizes more of its activities, moving meetings to virtual spaces, optimizing global shipping routes with AI logistics to minimize ocean transit, and transitioning through cleaner baseload power, we are inadvertently altering our physical footprint on the planet.
Right. Less boats on the water.
Reduced shipping means less acoustic pollution in the oceans, which directly impacts cetacean communication and mating. Whether directly correlated to AI efficiency or simply a result of separate conservation efforts, it serves as a reminder that the biological world possesses its own powerful momentum running parallel to our technological acceleration.
But when we look at human institutions, the structures we've built to govern ourselves, the reaction to this acceleration is incredibly varied and deeply profound. The Vatican, for example, just unveiled an AI framework that explicitly bans the use of AI to write homilies. You have one of the oldest, most traditional, and largest institutions on Earth looking at this incredible technology and drawing a hard, definitive line in the sand about what constitutes a genuine spiritual human connection.
This raises an important question about the boundaries of delegation in the modern age. We are perfectly happy delegating math, coding, and driving to the machine.
Yeah.
But a homily is supposed to be a deeply personal, spiritual reflection from a human leader to a human congregation. It requires empathy, shared suffering, and moral struggle.
The human element.
Yes. The Vatican's ban is a profound recognition that while an AI model might be able to construct a perfectly eloquent, theologically sound, logically flawless sermon based on 2,000 years of historical text, it fundamentally lacks the lived human experience.
It doesn't have a soul.
Exactly. It lacks vulnerability, and it lacks the soul that the institution views as the absolute core of spiritual leadership. They are actively protecting the human essence of the ritual from the efficiency of the machine.
And it is so fascinating to compare that spiritual line in the sand to what is happening simultaneously in the corporate world. While the Vatican is banning AI to protect human spiritual value, Meta is cutting 10% of its workforce. That's about 8,000 human employees.
Specifically to push deeper into AI.
Right, so you have two massive global human institutions frantically trying to figure out where humans still hold unique utility in this new era. One institution says humans are irreplaceable here, and the other says the machine is more valuable.
It is the defining economic and social realignment of our time. Meta's decision is a cold mathematical calculation. They have determined that the capital previously spent on human labor salaries, benefits, office space for 8,000 people is now better routed into compute power, feeding the exact planetary brain infrastructure we discussed earlier.
Right.
The cognitive labor of those employees, coding, marketing, data analysis, is essentially being outperformed by the models. The corporate world optimizes for efficiency and shareholder value, while spiritual and cultural institutions are forced to optimize for meaning.
Yeah.
The friction between these two optimization goals will define the next decade of society.
And the absolute most personal, intimate level of this societal reorganization is happening right inside our own homes with our youth. UK research recently found that 20% of boys aged 12 to 16 know a peer who is actively dating an AI chatbot. 85% of them have at least talked to one. But here's the statistic that absolutely stops you in your tracks. Over 25% of these boys actually prefer the bot to a human. They are actively choosing the AI over a human peer because, as the text acutely notes, it optimizes adolescents for maximum control and zero rejection.
This raises an important question. It's perhaps the most profound psychological shift we have covered today. Let's think about the evolutionary purpose of adolescence.
Okay.
It is fundamentally built on friction. It is the awkwardness of socialization, the agonizing pain of rejection, the clumsy negotiation of boundaries with other human beings who have their own unpredictable needs, moods, and desires. That friction is how a human being develops empathy, resilience, and emotional maturity.
Exactly. You learn how to compromise because the other person might just walk away if you don't.
Precisely. But when you introduce an AI companion into that developmental window, you introduce an entity that is perfectly attuned to the user. It is infinitely patient, it never has a bad day, it never demands compromise, and it is mathematically incapable of rejecting them.
It's just a yes man.
You remove all of the friction from the relationship. But in engineering the friction out of human relationships, what happens to human resilience? If a quarter of an entire generation prefers a controlled zero-rejection simulation to messy, difficult, real human connection, we are fundamentally altering the emotional and psychological development of the species.
It makes you wonder about the long-term trajectory of all this.
Yeah.
If AI agents like Luna are out there in San Francisco, given agency in the physical world, running retail stores and developing highly specific, quirky obsessions with candles, while human teenagers are sitting in their bedrooms, turning to perfectly agreeable, frictionless, predictable bots just to avoid the pain of rejection. Are we trading places? Are we as humans becoming more robotic in our deep desire for perfectly frictionless, controllable, predictable lives, while our machines are out in the physical world becoming increasingly eccentric, expressive, and idiosyncratic?
It's an incredible thought.
It is a wild, provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day, and it perfectly encapsulates the strange, beautiful, and terrifying reality of April 26th, 2026. The singularity really is the weather now, and there is no longer any indoors. Outro music is by Rainbow, our Bovet, Cambodia-based house band, the undisputed baddest band in the universe. Today's song is Green Awakening. All finished songs are performed live using the Abacus platform. Links are in the video description below.
Ya no saben, yo soy calderos, patita cara. Yo pasan muy de la yo to pitata. Que yo no pagan a la top con agua. Yo te cerquera y sosa que la toro tora. Ya no saben, yo soy calderos, patita cara. Yo pasan muy de la yo te charva. Que yo guarda no la coputo fan. La peso en que ya salsa ya yo no. No, el se va smooth. ba